Hi, my name is Sarah Vogt. I am doing a presentation on teaching English to Serbian speaking students. Some of this, there aren't very many similarities between Serbian and English. The biggest similarity is that they have the same basic sentence structure, which is subject, verb, object. Um, Serbian has two alphabets, actually. They do use the Latin alphabet, but they have several letters that we do not have. And they also use the Cyrillic alphabet, but it's really more for official use as opposed to everyday use. But students are taught the Cyrillic alphabet in Serbia. But so we both do use the Latin alphabet. And for the most part, capitalization is the same, with the exception they do not capitalize weeks or months. There really are no false cognates to speak of. I did quite a bit of research trying to find any, but there really weren't any. As far as pronunciation, Serbian does have some sounds that are very difficult to pronounce. There are 5 vowels and 25 consonant phonemes. It is a pitch stress language as opposed to English being a variable stress language. Um, in Serbian, it is very easy to spell words because all of the words are spelled exactly the way they are pronounced. So once you understand the sound of all of the letters of the alphabet, it's easy to spell the words once you hear them. It is a pitch accent. They do have short and long vowels. Almost all of the words have one accent or stress, as opposed to English focused on stress vowels. And we have more of a way of speaking to where important words are stressed when we talk. As I said, the Serbians have used the Latin alphabet but have several letters that we do not have, and the Cyrillic alphabet. Some of the phonological differences is that obviously in English we have spelling that does not represent the way words sound, and in Serbian they are spelled exactly the way they are pronounced. It was actually speaking to someone who was from Serbia, when she would teach me new words, I actually was able to spell them after I understood the sound of all the letters of the alphabet. Some information about the possessive form. In Serbian, the end of the subject changes depending on whether the subject ends in a vowel or consonant. For instance, I used my nephew's name. So when you say Alan's dog, you would say Alanov pas. So the end of Alan changes depending on whether it ends in a vowel or consonant. So you add the OV of for Alan because Alan ends in a consonant. If you would say Andrea's dog, which Andrea ends in a vowel, you would say Andrean pas. So the ending becomes IN because Andrea ends in a vowel. Also the ending of nouns change depending on whether the noun ends in a vowel or consonant. So for instance, when a word becomes plural, like chair, stolika, which ends in a vowel, it becomes stolice for chairs. Sun, which is sin, that ends in a consonant, because synovi, which is sons. So for many of the words, it's the ending of the word that changes depending on if it ends in a vowel or a consonant. Actually, names actually change depending on whether you're asking someone a question like, what are you doing, or how are you doing, or where are you doing this? So the ending of the name changes depending on what type of question you're asking. As far as verb tenses go, the ending of the verb changes depending on whether the verb ends in a noun or consonant again. So for instance, when you would say take, which the present form, it's uzimam, and for took, it becomes uzela sam. So sam, not only does the verb change for uzimam, but sam is added for past tense. For indirect and direct objects, they actually, in English, we would say, I'm giving it to her. The direct translation from Serbian is I'm giving her it. So that changes a little bit with when you're speaking about it, an indirect object. Um, they rarely use articles. I know we talked about in Spanish, they almost always use la or el in front of words, and in English we do at times use the, but in Serbian they rarely use an article in front of nouns. Actually, when I spoke to a native Serbian speaker, she said that was one of the biggest difficulties for her learning English was when to use the and when not to. Personal pronouns and gender. They do have feminine and masculine words and verbs and nouns. Objects can be feminine and masculine. If you're saying she is my friend, not only does she change, but the verb changes as well. As far as nouns are concerned, again, nouns are either masculine or feminine. And for instance, in English, we would say she is nice. And in Serbian, it would be ona je dobra, for she is nice. But for he is nice, it would be on he dobar. So not only does he or she change, but the verb changes as well. Word order with adjectives is basically the same as English most of the time. So they would say, if you would say in English, I saw a pretty house, the direct translation from Serbian is, I saw a pretty house. There are times when they would say house pretty, but that changes the meaning. For instance, if you would say, I saw a big house, you're emphasizing the big, the house, the fact that the house was big. But if you said house big, you're emphasizing house. So, but it is not common to change the order. Typically, the adjective comes before the noun. With helping verbs to express negative, you do not have to say I. Like if you would say I don't understand, it's similar to Spanish, to where the way you conjugate the verb expresses whether you're saying I or you or he or she. So it isn't necessary to say those words because the way you conjugate the verb determines what you're speaking about. Serbian does not have any phrasal verbs. They do speak with double negatives. So for instance, if we would say I don't have any, they would say I don't have nothing. For auxiliary verbs to form questions, again, you do not have to say you because of the way the verb is conjugated. So instead of for how are you, you would just see kakok si, and you don't have to say you because kakok, the way that you're conjugating the verb, already informs the listener that you're meaning you. Some of the pragmatic differences between Serbian people and people from the U.S. is that they're very direct. If someone has an observation, they feel they should just say it, and it is not considered rude, but just the truth. Oftentimes, they would say they almost feel an obligation to tell what they perceive as the truth. So at times, there can be misunderstandings about what may be perceived as what we would perceive as rude, but they would just perceive it as telling the truth. There is definitely less personal space than what we would have here in the U.S. I know there are quite a few countries that are similar to that, but they definitely have less personal space. And as far as greetings go, they do kiss on both cheeks. They do have a formal form of you, similar to Spanish. So V is the plural form of you, but it's also the formal form of you to show respect. And for the most part, they would use that for anyone who is older than them or in a position where they kind of report to them. So definitely, we do not have a formal form of you in English, but I would say that we use more body language and vocabulary to show respect. Some history about Serbians in the U.S. is that they first came to the U.S. in the early 1800s, and they mainly lived in Louisiana and Mississippi. Because they lived in that area, most of them in the Civil War actually fought for the Confederacy due to the area that they lived in. Um, Many did come to the U.S. due to the Bosnian War in the 90s, and I would say that there are conflicted feelings between Serbians and the U.S. due to the fact that the U.S. sent troops to support Bosnia. So, although there are many Serbians that live here, I would say they have a conflicted feelings about the U.S. Although St. Louis has one of the largest populations of Bosnian, there are many Serbians as well. Chicago actually has the largest population of Serbs, which is over 500,000.